Hi, everybody, and welcome to Modern Astrology. Today, we're going to take a look at Pluto and Aquarius. We're going to stack it up against Donald Trump, who looks like, by all indications, he's going to be the next president of the United States. Before we start, just a little bit about ourselves astrologically. My name is Damien McKinnon. I am an Aquarius Sun, a Leo Moon, and a Taurus Ascendant.
Hey, I'm Sandra. I'm a Leo, Sun, Moon, and Leo, and a Gemini rising.
Oh, okay.
Crystal.
Well, I'm Crystal. I am a Leo sun, a Leo rising, and a Sagittarius moon.
And I'm Michaelin. I'm an Aquarius sun, a Libra rising, and a Libra moon.
And I am Gianna. I am a Gemini sun, a Cancer moon, and a Virgo rising.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so depending where you are in the world, Pluto at the moment's moving into Aquarius. So I thought we'd take a look at that today and just have a look at what that may mean for humanity, for America, for us as individuals and things like that. Just a little bit about Pluto. Pluto moves into Aquarius about the 19th or 20th of November, depending where you are in the world. It's had 16 years in Capricorn, so it's been there for a long time. It's a transpersonal planet, which means that wherever Pluto is on the chart pretty much has implications for the human race. It moves so slowly that it affects us globally rather than the more personal planets that are quickly moving all the time. Often Pluto represents a transformation in power structures and what the focus of humanity will be depending on where you find it in on the chart. So depending on the element, you can get different focuses. For example, when Pluto's in a fire sign, you see an emphasis on individual expression, in ambition, and also vision as well. So it's a great time for great individuals, if you will. Earth signs, like we've just seen with Capricorn, you see an emphasis on practical transformation, material resources, and also structural systems going in place. And we've seen a lot of that happen since Pluto went into Capricorn, which we're going to touch on today. In water signs, we see the emotions, the intuition, and spirituality become a focus for humanity too. And when Pluto moves into an air sign, you see intellectual transformations, you see a focus and an emphasis on communication and also on relationships too. How we focus on and develop relationships and how relationships become more centric to the way humanity moves forward. Just a little bit about the planet. Pluto has an elliptical orbit. It's got an eccentric orbit. Sometimes as it orbits, it's actually closer to the sun than Neptune is. It's odd in that regard. And one of the upshots of that is it spends a different amount of time in each one of the signs depending on where it is in that elliptical orbit. In the particular case of Pluto and Aquarius, we're looking at a 20-year run here. So it's going to be there for quite some time. Also, Pluto is retrograde for 50% of the year as well. So Pluto being retrograde is pretty commonplace for it. It's not unusual. It's probably highly likely that it's retrograde on your own chart. 1778 to 1798, that's the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius, and just moving through quickly. We had the American Revolution, which began in 1775. I think it was the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And then the British surrender in 81. So that was wrapped up fairly quickly, all things taken into account. On May the 5th, 1789, King Louis the 16th addresses one of the councils there to look at the financial crisis that they've got. And the crisis was a 1% problem. There was such an unfair distribution of wealth in France. It had become such an incredible problem to the French people that they had started discussing it. 1793, King Louis and Marie Antoinette go to the guillotine. So that's wrapped up like a package. And again, too, like I said before, that's one of the only other time in history we've had that same disparity of wealth that we do now, the 1% problem. And that's how it was resolved under Pluto and Aquarius. You know,
That's one way to do it.
isn't it? Make of that of what you will.
Make an example.
I'm not
Yeah.
leading anybody at all with this. Not making any predictions about what I see playing.
Hey. History repeats itself, right?
Well, who knows? We'll see, I guess, and I guess we'll see it on CNN when it happens. We probably won't be reported accurately, but we'll see something.
Yeah.
So, also, back in 1791, the Haitian Revolution, the slaves in Saint Domingue, if I pronounce that properly, have been uprising and have started killing slave owners and burning plantations. And they managed to repel the French and the English for the next 11 years until they finally declare independence in 1804. And finally, the Industrial Revolution really hit its stride back when Pluto was in Aquarius the first time around. We had factories beginning around 1784. We had the power loom invented in 1785 and the cotton gin invented in 1793. So industrialization and agriculture, the gap between the two, almost disappears and they become intertwined. We've got this whole massive boost in productivity and a big change in the way the world produces. And one of the upshots of that is we see the rise of banks and financial institutions for the first time in history, not just something for the rich, but something that's also there for corporations and companies that are wanting to grow and invest and just want somewhere to put all their money. So that's, again, something that happened during a Pluto movement, through a sign. That's back to Pluto and Aquarius. And in its own way, I guess that was a form of technology back then. That began the whole technology of finance. So that brings us to 2024 to 2044. I've taken a long way around getting this. But these are some of the things we might expect in the next decade. The first one is AI and robotics. We've got the technology, and there's a whole bunch of interesting questions that are being asked around this at the moment. I've heard it said we live in a time where we could pretty much stop working if we wanted to. We've got the technology for it. We've got the automation for it. The only reason we're not doing it is because the people who are used to getting paid money will not be getting paid money. In fact, we pretty much won't need money, or not in the way that we have it now. So really, it's an issue of power. And I can't think of a better time to talk about power than, Pluto moving into another sign. And of all those signs, Aquarius. So I think this is something that's going to come up.
Well, I think it's interesting the point you ended on with the last Pluto and Aquarius, in that the Industrial Revolution and that's when banks and those institutions came into play, and kind of feels like that's all about to be reversed with the introduction of AI and robotics. It's like everyone went out to work, and now there's the potentiality of the complete opposite happening, and that's a big step into the unknown. Like we don't know what that involves. What do people do? I guess Pluto does invite us into the unknown. Aquarius probably pushes us into it. It's interesting.
Well, I feel like they're gonna probably take over. That's the way I see it. I know when I was like a kid, I was born in '79, and my father told me this years ago that it would come to even this point. So I don't see it. I don't see it doing nothing but advancing more when it comes to AIs and the robotic thing, especially with Pluto, that whole power thing, and the whole innovation change. You know what I mean? Going into Aquarius, that's the way. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
But I'm a conspiracy theorist, so I don't trust it. I
don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I think that all the it's all out there for everybody to see. There's an interesting thing that's happened is this move away from consumerism. You go to a supermarket now and basically you're the checkout operator. You're going up this machine, scanning your own products and leaving. They're so desperate to fire their own staff and get as many human beings out of these places as possible. You look at these big warehouses, I think these Amazon automated warehouses and things, knowing full well that the consumers who are buying their products are those workers, So where do you go on that? We're seeing, and it's a form of aggressive market cannibalization. You're killing off your own customers by not hiring people. You know what I mean? But then we see this massive growth in business to business. Maybe there is an economy, we're just not a part of it. That's the bit that worries me. These businesses and corporations will just start trading with each other. They won't bother with. I agree with what your dad said, Crystal. It was always going to happen. It's the same as
Mhm.
globalization. It was always going to happen as soon as we realized the world was round. Just what happens after that? That's always the question.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
I think also with just like Pluto kind of bringing like darker things to the surface,
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
we're gonna be seeing how like kind of the dark side of technology and the the impact that it has on the collective, both on the like an environmental level, on our psyche, on our like disconnect from each other. Because what I worry about also is that the Aquarius energy can be very detached and cold sometimes. And so like are we going to experience a time where we're all trying to like fight for the advancement of humanity, but
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
where's the warmth and the con like the actual humanity in that?
Mm-hmm.
Um, is like also as you mentioned, Damien, as well with like America's militarization of the world, essentially like thinking of like how they're also using like remote controlled bombs and remote controlled weaponry. Like they're just taking and so like we're kind of like humanity is like fighting. It seems like we're trying to advance the idea of collective well-being while at the same time fighting these very like dark technological forces.
yeah,
So I feel like that's something I like really worry about with this transit.
yeah,
I agree with you. That's been one of my concerns in the detachment aspect of it. It's like no offense to the Aquarians here because I love you all and I'm surrounded by Aquarians, but there is that element of I know what's right because I'm an
Mm-hmm.
Aquarius
Mm-hmm.
and we're just going to do that. And you might not agree, but we're doing it anyway. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that has been a concern to me. But when I look back at Pluto in Capricorn, it really gave us an opportunity. I really feel like Pluto's job is to help us to do the inner work, and it uses the screen of whatever sign it's traveling through. And so, in Capricorn, we got to see all of the power issues and the hierarchy and the patriarchy and structures and all of that sort of thing. And we got to if we worked with it and went inwards with it, we got to see where all of that already exists within us. And that helps to dissolve the fear because you can work with that. You've got power there. You don't have power in the outside world. And so now the screen is going to be Aquarius, and every sign has its positives and its negatives. And so the negatives are the things that we can work with, and I guess the positives are the things that we can actually celebrate and take some joy from potentially.
Just bouncing off that though,
I
as
agree.
an Aquarius, as a Gen X, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but I feel like too, especially for the last decade, we've really wallowed in our own emotions too, and our own, we've been forcing our own psyches on other people too. So just a little bit of detachment from that for me is going to be a welcome thing. But that being said, Aquarius will fight for humanity as long as it doesn't have to be in contact with humanity. That's the thing. So it's a bit of a paradox in that regard. They'll fight for the spirit of man just as long as man stays a hell of a way out of the way while they're doing it. So I hear you on the detachment part. You know what I mean?
But then
Mm-hmm.
that's perfect for AI and robotics because they may be introduced in the Capricorn era where there was a particular plan and intention behind them, but now they're actually rolled out in the Aquarius era, which is there to fight for humanity. And so, the role of AI and robotics has the potential to be transformed by Pluto into something that is of benefit for humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like with Pluto too, you have to go through destruction before you get to the light. Like, what I mean, no matter what, it's going to have to be some type of destruction before rebirth. And that may go for every single sign it's in. Maybe we've seen the best out of Capricorn that we're going to see with Pluto because it's moving in Aquarius. Now it's like going through it all over again, but boom, it's another destruction first. We all gonna have to feel before we see the light of it all. And I definitely, and I'm an optimistic person, but I definitely see some destruction before I see the light of day here. You know, I don't know. I don't, this, the AI, I mean, they're helpful, but I see a lot of negatives already. The kids can't even learn because of the AI, you know? My daughter barely know how to spell because all she has to do is get on Google and so that's a negative aspect of it already, you know? And this is just kind of the beginning of us getting AI out here. Um, are people going to be able to think for themselves, you know, and how long before we start to see the positive aspects of it? You know, and I know it's coming, but what we're going to have to go through before we get there. That's the thing. I ain't scared. I ain't worried about it. I'm prepared for whatever they got coming. But, you know, it's just, you know, I don't know. It's just the way I see it.
Well, humans are going to be able to learn from AI also. I heard, I was listening to something a couple of days ago and they were talking about an AI did a chess match against a human and it came up with these new moves and the humans were like, whoa. So they took the chess moves and they incorporated them into their game. So that suggests that AI is going to teach humans in the future. You know what I mean? Like we
Oh,
can
no
learn
doubt.
from AI.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
no
mean,
doubt.
obviously what you're saying is a
Yeah.
definite but that's what we need to kind of do is we need to navigate these waters
Hmm.
and use it to our benefit instead of which I mean with the children that's a very good point. You know, I've got kids too and they do everything on their Chromebooks now and help my son, he's 17 and
Hmm.
he's like, man, I can't spell anything because I never have to. So that is a
I know.
real problem. But I
Hmm.
think, you
Hmm.
know, if you know, like in healthcare, you know, AI is coming and it's starting to diagnose people and there's all these cool advancements where AI is, you know, you can cross reference symptoms and it's really cool. So there's a lot of positive, but there is some negative, and I
Yeah,
think the negative is going to be
I agree.
more, you know, but I think is if we so that's what the Aquarius part of this Pluto transit
Hmm.
is embracing it. You know, the
Hmm.
all of this technology and kind of putting our mind into it and learning how to use it to our benefit because the AI is only going to do what we tell it to do. You know what I mean? Like the humans are going to train the AIs,
Exactly.
and then the AIs are coming back and
Hmm.
they're learning. So it's a learning model. So they're learning, and then they're coming back with the ability to train us, which is super cool.
I think
And I
that
think that's what it is. I think that everybody, we all know what the positive thing is supposed to be, but I don't think nobody's prepared for what the darker side could be. You know what I mean?
Right, which
And
is
I'm not
Pluto.
saying I'm not saying thinking pessimistic. Don't think that way, but just be prepared that
Hmm.
sometimes when we prepare something that's for the greatness, it's a dark side to it too. And with
Yeah.
Pluto, it's that dark before it goes to the light. Because I
Hmm.
definitely see the positive aspect, and I use AI. You know what I mean? And sometimes, if I really, sometimes I feel like without that Chat GPT thing, I don't know what I would do. You know, because that's when I'm running a business all by myself. But I also see
Hmm.
myself, I could get lazy with it sometimes too. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And things that I would normally do for myself, I like to pat myself on the back for doing my own work. You see what I'm saying? But when I get so lazy, where I don't feel like I'm like, okay, write a blog for me. That don't make me feel that good. But
Yeah, that's
I got
right.
the job done, so it's a positive aspect to it. But then it's that other side, like, man, I don't feel, you know what I mean? So I
Yeah, creativity
definitely,
killer.
I don't want to take the greatness from it at all
Hmm.
because I do see I see the greatness in it all the time. But I just know that somewhere under there, you know, is, you know what I mean? It can have some dark aspects to it. And
Hmm.
I'm starting to see little things already, just with the children, just with our younger generation. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because they may not be as advanced and as bright as us and know how
But
to
they're
navigate
not
and
really
stuff.
gonna, but to what you're saying, Crystal, just like when we were in high school, remember they told us that we weren't always going to have calculators with us. Well, look at us now. I have a
Yeah.
calculator on my wrist.
it's
I
phones
mean,
with it. We've got cameras with us all
True.
the
I
time.
can, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
literally, I can scream, "Hey Siri, what's 2 + 2?" and it'll tell me, you know, from nowhere.
But we
So,
know
you know,
that.
that's
We knew that.
right.
We was at least able to learn it. They're not even getting a chance to learn it. You see what I'm saying? When we
Oh
were
yeah, yeah, I
children,
see what
we
you're
learned
saying.
what two plus
Hmm.
two was, but they're not like able to. I'm telling my daughter is bad with her. She can't spell anything because everything is just handed to her. Now, my older kids, if they decide right now they want to say Siri spell something, they already knew before they, I mean, they might be a little,
Yeah.
I forgot how to, but these kids are coming up from not knowing almost anything right now at this time because AI is doing everything. And it's not AI. I'm not blaming AI. I just think that there's a darker aspect to this. It's not all 100% positive. And I think
And
we had
a lot of
better
this started like what you're saying with video games. You remember this video game revolution where the kids stopped going outside and they started playing video games.
True.
And everybody, it's just a whole thing. And it's the AI is definitely, that could definitely, I see what you're saying. I mean, what do we do about that?
I think in
I
the
think
end
it's
of
just
the day,
saying
it comes down to who's
there
creating
really is
it,
nothing.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just be aware. I don't know. There's really, you know what I mean? I don't know.
I don't either.
I think it's got a lot to do with who's rolling it out, who's creating it. I heard lately that Google got into a lot of trouble with their AI, and they were rolling it out so quickly to catch up with ChatGPT that their AI was starting to give out really, really negative answers to questions people were asking, telling them to do bad things to themselves and stuff. Some whistleblower said that it got to the stage that they had people sitting behind. So every time before an AI answer was given, they had a human set of eyes on it to screen it before it went out. And that was a big thing for a while there. And I think that's got a lot to do with where the negative parts of AI are. One of the most obvious ones is you use the example of asking Siri what 2 + 2 = 4 is. Well, one of the immediate negatives is now a corporation's got that whole dialogue. It's been stored. That data's been sent off, they've been tracked. Your phone's listening to the conversations that you're having and everything like that so that it can get an idea of who you are and what you're interested in. So it can start pushing ads to you, for revenue and stuff like that. And that's already a negative application of AI. You talked about a scenario where AI is starting to diagnose disease. Imagine you've had a car accident. I mean, this is pretty extreme, but maybe this is where it's heading and you're in A&E. They're about to get an AI to have a look at you, but before it does, you've got to watch 30 seconds worth of ads, before it starts diagnosing you and things like that. Why not? This is what's driving it right now. I mean, Google is in front of the DOJ in this year, I think it is, for monopolizing digital advertising. You know what I mean? And they're one of the big companies that are driving the development of AI. These companies have been so quick to run into rolling out something in that AI space that they're not really paying attention to how they're doing it or even why they're doing it other than making more money. And Crystal, I agree with you. I think in the age of Aquarius, you'll see a crystallization in Saturn first and then a shattering from Uranus. That's the way it plays out. So I think the old forms of power, and this is me being probably a bit of a nihilist and a bit of an anarchist, everything crystallizing all the old forms of power and then bam, getting shattered. But we've seen it before. We just talked about it just before, about the last time this came around. How that happens, and maybe it won't happen violently. Maybe it'll be a digital revolution. I don't know. Maybe it's already underway. But one thing I do despair about right now is I know technology is out of control. And I don't trust a lot of these sources. I don't trust Google. I don't trust Apple. And they're too far in our business and our lives right now without our permission, listening to what we're doing and watching where we're going and all of that sort of stuff. Some servers probably got more awareness of me than I have of myself at the moment. What my buying decisions are, what my interests are, what I'm most likely to be. When I turn 60, it's probably already got some algorithms that are calculating what my interests will be and stuff like that, and what I'm more likely to buy. And I can't think of a more shallow, more pointless use of technology and money than advertising and buying choices.
But that's all a really important point, I think, is that I think as humanity, we've got Aquarius, we have lost sight of who we are, right? And this can potentially force us into taking that back because that's our power, is to know who we are. It's like, well, if a machine's going to know me better than I am, then the only power I have is to actually get back up to speed. And what Crystal was saying about the education system failing, like the education system was set up for the Industrial Revolution to produce people who work in factories. And so it was there to supply us with all of the the training that we needed to be good, productive workers. Now we move into an age where that's not even actually necessary anymore.
Not even
So
on the table.
schools,
Yeah.
how are schools even necessary anymore? Because they're teaching, they can't keep up with AI. They're teaching outdated formulas. They're teaching things that we need to do in order to be successful in the future, but they've got no idea what the future actually looks or
nobody
feels like.
cares anymore. Right?
And so maybe
you're right. So yeah, but I think
maybe it forces us to become self-reliant. Maybe it forces us to become self-knowing, so that we can wield this technology instead of being victim to it.
Yeah.
And because,
be aware.
you know,
That's something I could think.
From being a homeschool mom, you know, I can see that, you know, a child who is allowed to explore what he's interested in learns everything he needs to know from that. And yes, technology does play a part in that, because he can, you know, he's interested in medieval, you know, the ways people they traditionally used to make things. So again, there's the technology aspect there, but it's the traditional technology. So he uses, you know, he can't go back to those times, so he uses the internet to find those things out, and then he works with them and he creates things from that space. And so he's constantly learning, and that is a power that he has, that the school system takes away from kids, because unless what they're interested in is on the curriculum, then they're told that it's not relevant, and so they stop being interested in it, and then they don't know what they're interested in anymore. And then a computer, they knows better what is best for them than they do. And so it might teach us that we need to take back our power, and that's what Aquarius is all about.
Look, I agree, but I think there's a separation of two things there. One is the technology and what we do about it. They're two completely separate things, and I think a lot of that technology that we're wrestling with right now is a hangover from that Pluto and Capricorn. And even if we disengage, even if we do suddenly become self-reliant and you know, start to focus on our own realities and our own consciousness, this juggernaut of technology is still raging forward, unregulated. You know what I mean? And without any ethical constraint. That's a quote from David Attenborough. That's 96% of the mammals on the face of planet Earth are human beings. You know what I mean? If you have 90% of the mammals on the face of the Earth are choosing their own destinies while the world's going the way it's going, I think it's bigger than a lot of us, and it's more than we're ever going to solve in 20 years. But I think, and I'm hoping that this is what's going to come up in this time. And that's part of what I mean too. I think maybe that detachment in Aquarius is exactly what we need to do with it, because we got a bit too far up our own asses in the last 16 years. Excuse my French, but I think so. That's what I think. We got a little too obsessed with themselves and a little too desperate for attention to really care about what was happening to the rest of the world. Just anybody seen this thing with Johnny Somali, this influencer? He just goes around the world being obnoxious. I think through Southeast Asia, because he'd get arrested or killed if he did it in America or, you know, other places and things like that. He's gone through Japan and basically got arrested. He just goes in and starts harassing, you know, girlfriends in front of their boyfriends or throwing food in restaurants, and he live streams it for attention. He went to Korea and he started getting beaten up by people. They saw his streams, they knew where he was. They'd go down there and kick the hell out of him. I hear now he's under arrest. And Japan kicked him out, by the way. He was extradited and never allowed to return, which would have been great for his ratings. But in Korea now, he's locked up. He's looking at anything from 10 to 25 years, 29 years in a Korean jail. And that for me sums up a lot of that, of what we saw, that self-obsession and that demand for attention of the last period around. And I'm ready to see the end of that energy, you know. So, and I'm sounding like some grumpy old Aquarian man sitting on his porch yelling at the kids, you know. But I'm ready for that, you know. I think if we're going to grow, especially in the West, because the rest of the world is getting so strong, while to me we feel like we're getting so weak and vulnerable and soft, you know. So I don't know. Maybe I sound like I should be rocking an Arnold Schwarzenegger 80s flat top.
No, I agree.
But that's
I agree. That's great.
Yeah.
all that for attention. The stuff they do for attention now is just ridiculous.
Well, it's the attention gets the money. It gets them. They get money straight away. You know, ka-ching, ka-ching, every time. I was looking at this video of Johnny Somali sitting in a Korean restaurant. He got noodles, and then he's just throwing noodles at the door and throwing noodles at the people live streaming, hoping somebody will take a swing at him. You know.
Oh my, I would.
So,
yeah, I probably would too.
Absolutely.
you know, if he was around my wife, my daughter acting like that, I'd probably put him in the ground. I don't know. You know.
Yeah, fact.
So, and they'd have it. Everyone, half the people watching are probably waiting to see that happen. You know. But that in itself is a disease, whichever side you fall on. I keep saying it again and again. It's never been a better time to be mentally ill, I think, in a lot of ways. And I know how dismissive that sounds and how rude that sounds, but you can monetize it now. You know? He is bragging about how he's a sociopath. He doesn't care about people and stuff like that, you know. So anyway,
So again, I feel like there's mirrors here, which is not something I've considered before, but you know, a lot of this is the byproduct of the Industrial Revolution, because before that there was stability in the home, and then, you know, it was more important to be a productive citizen than to actually do the most important job of being a parent. And so everyone had to go out to work, and so all of these kids grew up with money given to them, as opposed to the nurturing that maybe should have been available to them. I'm not saying that everything before that was idyllic. I'm sure it wasn't by any means, but you know, that altered the potential for that, because both parents were out, both parents were working. You know, kids were sent to school, and so there's like small little windows of opportunity in the evenings or weekends that there was time for connection. And so that level of connection's been depleted, and it was been replaced with money. And so that's how those generations then like evolve with like, oh well, you know, there is no deeper level, because, you know, that hurts, because that doesn't feel good, that doesn't feel available to me, so let's go out and make money. I've always had that available to me, and so I demand that money comes to me, and so I go and do the easy thing. And maybe again Aquarius is going to bring us back around. Either it's going to make that exponentially worse or maybe it'll bring it back around to, you know, creating it was the realization, you know, Pluto brings the shadow aspect, so the realization of how shallow that is and how it doesn't actually feed what our souls are craving.
Sure. I just love, you know, and you talk about the money replacing the love, but then when you look back in history, there never really was a lot of love either. You know, there was traditional, I think that's what we're all working towards. I think that's where we're going, and I think we've got a good, tremendous opportunity. You know, you talk about this productivity paradigm with all the different generations. Generation X were the first to step off that ladder. We're the first to suddenly face unemployment at the level that we did. And, you know, to not have the guaranteed future that the boomers were presented with and things like that. And we're the parents of the generation of these kids that are out now. So in a lot of ways, the way it's turned out has probably got everything to do with the way that we turned out. So we have to take some degree of responsibility for that, I guess, at the end of the day. Michael and I were talking about it a while ago. At the end of the day, these kids are probably so soft, as the Gen X would call them, because the Gen X parents have probably overprotected them from other Gen X parents. You know, we've been so aggressive and so hostile to each other on so many levels that maybe we have excessively shouted our children and so on. But you're right about money and comfort being a placebo. That being said too, I think it's also been an excellent tool for controlling the consciousness of humanity. Here in Australia, you can get almost any bill through the gate as long as basic human comforts aren't interrupted. People over here just won't even pay attention. So I think that's got part of the equation too, you know. But, you know, hey.
Yeah, it's interesting how Australia's evolved in that manner, because, you know, it was always considered the laid back, chilled out place to live and grow up, whereas it's totally not anything like that. You know, it's what Australia is when you live in it, as opposed to what people perceive it to be. It's now two completely different things, right?
You saw with COVID, you know, people were told to stay home, and then the camera crews went down on the beach, and there were more people on the beach than there had ever been on a weekday. You know what I mean? People just don't give a shit. So
I know, well, because we homeschool, like we go to the beach during the week as a normal thing, and it's great because there's nobody else ever there. Whereas COVID came along, and that was actually the biggest disruption for us. It was like, why are all these people on our beach? Go home.
okay. So next, another thing we might expect with Pluto and Aquarius is decentralization. A lot of these structures that really took root and came into their full strength under Capricorn, and these are evolving structures that have been in place for a long time, talking financial institutions, governments and all of that. We may see a decentralization. It's been really interesting. Getting back to the topic of Donald Trump, one of his first promises seems to be pushing back a lot of the decision-making process to a state level, rather than things all happening at a federal level where the government's telling everybody what to do nationally and rolling it out. I was interested watching that press conference he had on the overhauls they want to do on the education system over there. He set some incredibly high KPIs, yet at the same time he's also said also the government won't be running this, we'll be sending it all off to the individual states to manage the rollout of this. So I thought that was a bit of a double-ended gift. You know what I mean? He's promising a lot, and he's telling everybody else that they're going to be responsible for enacting it. But one of the results of that, as you can see, is it's a decentralization. It seems to be a central part of this whole Roe versus Wade argument too. It's not a blanket ban. It's basically allowing states to make decisions at their own level. And someone's going to come along and probably put a comment to completely blow that statement out of the water. But for the rest of the world, that's what we're seeing sitting here. It's not quite the intellectual apocalypse we're seeing. So, I mean, these are early signs of decentralization, but Pluto and Aquarius suggests we may see that as well. Other areas I'd like to see it, certainly in the technology sector. I want to see that broken up. I'm hoping this monopoly hearing for Google has a drastic effect on the amount of power that they have. I think they're a really unhealthy presence now. They've outlived their stay, I think, in that regard. But we'll see. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, with the way things are right now and will be for a while, the money will talk. You know, they probably made more money off advertising during the election than whatever fine they may be facing for monopoly charges. They can pay that without even thinking about it.
But then, you know, that option for, you know, the money to win, that's the Pluto and Capricorn, you know, that's where they did all their bidding, whereas now they've moved into Pluto and Aquarius. So it will be interesting to see how that plays out for the likes of Google and those monopolies. And we were talking before about the decentralization thing with Trump, in that, you know, he's made a lot of promises that are very indicative of moving with this energy of Pluto and Aquarius. But, you know, he'll either do it or he won't, and it'll happen anyway. It'll happen despite him, because he will have reneged on all of the promises that he made, and there will be uprising as a result of it. So, yeah, one way or the other, I reckon it's the way of the future.
When with the current, or is going to try and fight it? I think that's what you're saying, and I agree. Yeah, I think it's possibly bigger than he is. Well, it's definitely bigger than he is. I think it's the will of humanity. It's shifting gears now, so we'll just see if he keeps up or not. Yeah, that'll be an interesting discussion. One of the other areas we may see is climate change action. You know, we've talked about it a lot, about emissions and all of this sort of stuff. There's a lot of push in Australia just to completely get out of the whole, Tokyo Accords and stuff like that. And Australia's dragged their ass on it anyway. They've never really been that committed. But then one of the things that keeps coming up again and again, it's come through these elections as well, has been the power of lobbyists and these big organisations that control the direction and destinies of countries. Australia is so in bed with the mining companies and the fossil fuel industry. We don't really have any control over where that goes, not as we are. So, you know, whether we see change in climate action or not remains to be seen. It needs to be something that people want. And the funny thing is, the whole time we've had this discussion about it, the media keep telling us it's something that the average consumer's got to do to turn around. You know, we've got to buy less plastic bags. We've got to, you know, get our own cup for coffee instead of getting a new plastic cup every time, completely ignoring the fact these corporations are spilling out, billions of tons of carbon every year. So, we need to see what comes out after that. If there's going to be a change in the thinking, if there's going to be some real pressure brought to bear on these corporations and companies, revolutionary political movements. So I think we're all sitting on the edge of our seat waiting to see how this one plays out. When we looked at the previous time Aquarius had Pluto rock into town, we saw all sorts of upheaval. And interestingly, when you look at the history after that, up till now, there weren't a lot of big revolutions like that. Things sort of quietened down. Things would flare up. You had revolutions and some smaller countries, but not ones that changed the destiny of the first world, not the way that these ones did. An interesting thing is I think with Trump getting in, and don't bang me for supporting Trump, I'm not necessarily when I say this, but one of the big political promises that he's had is to stop going to war with other countries, and that in itself is revolutionary. It's a form of change. I don't know what a world with America not having boots on the ground in the Middle East or other countries looks like. You know what I mean? So in that way, that's a little quiet revolution in itself. It's opening itself up for a whole bunch of political blowback and resistance and things like that. But I'm cautiously optimistic on a swing towards peace. I think we're ready for it, especially as we go into Aquarius. What do you guys think?
I mean, he seems to be getting along with all the other world leaders. That's what, they're telling us. That's what we see. And if that is the case, then that, kind of gives me the idea that maybe we are looking at a world peace situation, or maybe he would like to have a world peace situation. I don't know if we could ever actually do that, but Pluto and Aquarius, maybe.
I think that he has a good way with words and appeasing the ego of another individual. So people in power in other countries are obviously similar in regards to like their own egos. But as far as like the on the ground reality of the situation, like America as an imperial power, he'll always have to serve some sort of agenda. So while it might look like peace is, happening, I don't necessarily know that that's the reality of it, if that makes sense. It's kind of like as whatever it needs to be done to kind of keep the masses quiet, whereas like right now the
Mm-hmm.
masses are like wide awake, like seeing the
Yeah.
reality of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
America's like true colors. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I am interpreting his. But yeah, I don't like it's difficult to say because I kind of feel like looking at his chart as well, he's a businessman. So he knows how to
Mm-hmm.
play his cards right.
Mhm.
And like I'm a Gemini sun, so I kind of understand in a way,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
the duality of what he's playing. And that's why I think the rhetoric that he often he knows that it's serving a certain population. Like he knows that it's serving his followers. So like he's gonna keep on going in that direction, even if necessarily if you look at his upbringing, like he w was brought up in New York City. I honestly can't even imagine that he would like in Queens. I can't imagine someone being so, I don't know. There's a lot of like conflicting things about him.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yes.
And his moon in Sagittarius also indicates
Mhm.
that, he can he can get really passionate about things and vocalize it quickly and not actually have the level of depth of understanding that of anything that he's talking about, but he knows that it will be received. And so, he can talk about all the things that people want to hear and, go for it, and he'll get bored before it actually plays out to be anything. He has the potential to do that. Obviously, we don't know how it will all play out.
We've seen he can invent new words too. What's that cold thief word he dropped at the UN? The first time around. Watching from the rest of the world, I remember being so outraged when Trump got in the first time. There was one thing that I expected after he got in, and there's one thing I didn't expect. The first thing I expected was that the greenback would go down, the American dollar would drop, and it would happen almost immediately. And it didn't. In fact, it went up at some points, but it never got any lower than it was. And it's always a prime indicator on how the rest of the world receives. And the second one, and this is the one I didn't expect, was that war more or less stopped. They still had troops overseas, still committed in places that they were. But the act of waging war and resolving war was something you put a priority on because it was bad for business. If you're not in the weapons and munitions business, it hurts every other sector. They were two things I didn't expect. One thing that surprised me this time around and didn't surprise me was when he made a commitment to peace, part of his campaign promise, that the Liberals didn't embrace that or didn't even give that any thought. And it worried me how comfortable people were with the idea of how comfortable and how much a part of the common thinking that being at war and being invading other countries is. For people that had never really registered a blip on the radar. Especially in spiritual circles. I spoke to other people who were in spiritual circles who were outraged by him for the same reasons I was the first time around that he come. But then you mentioned the concept of peace, of withdrawing war, and they suddenly jump on the idea, well, somehow this is a justified war, they're fighting for freedom and all of this sort of stuff, when they're really not. And it kind of disappointed me too, when I saw other people react that way. And a lot of them were boomers too, that I'd spoken to. They were ones who had been living in that whole post-Cold War era, comfortable with the idea of a world that way. So I don't know. I'm just interested to see how that plays out. But I think we're going to see other revolutionary political movements happen too. The very least of which is going to be the way that the mic got dropped at the end of this election with the different communities, the LGBTQIA plus community. Hopefully I got all those letters right. Don't flame me or cancel me if I don't. I don't think that's resolved. I don't think that's resolved at all. I don't think a lot of other things that have come up. The one thing Trump's done so well, which I think has had such a negative impact on America, has done such a good job of polarizing the left and the right. And when you stand back and you look at what the left and the right stand for now, they really aren't the left and the right anymore, and I think there'll be a reckoning for that. I think he's done such a good job of demonizing his opposition that it's created this schism through the thinking of American people, and that people can get political mileage just for standing against him. That makes them credible. And that's not healthy, because that says nothing about the quality of who you're voting for. You're not voting for somebody, you're voting against somebody. And I think maybe with Biden, they got away with it the first time, and I think maybe they went to the well one time too many with Kamala Harris. So who knows? But this is, I know I'm getting off the subject of astrology and getting into politics here. So. But getting back to revolutionary political movements, I suppose that's an indicator. New work models. We saw this after COVID. So whether this becomes a thing or not, I know a lot of businesses and corporations in the UK now have cancelled working from home, but I know a lot of Australian companies are still using it. In fact, it's become part of their recruitment process. It's become a package that they offer, potential new workers and things like that too. But maybe with AI, maybe with all these new technological changes that are coming with new communication models and things like that, we'll see an emphasis on that. We'll see, and as you say, Sandra, too, maybe the whole idea of work will come under review. Here's an interesting one, and I've seen this come up again and again, as human longevity and augmentation. I just went to a talk last week about, how the whole genome project and things like this, and how they're able to diagnose disease at a genetic level now. They have a look at your genes at an early age. They've got a good chance of predicting what sort of diseases you're prone to later in life. And the whole idea of this, the whole benefit of society is predictive medicine. We can treat you for illness before you've got it, which takes a massive burden off the healthcare system. Which opens up opportunities for pharmaceutical companies, I guess. But also, see, one of the downsides of that too is that just means more people in a society that's unable to sustain the amount of people we've got now. So I don't know who's not talking to who about what the future looks like. But it sounds like we're looking at longer human life with less things for human beings to do. And finally, new pandemics. We're expected as a species to be immune to antibiotics within the next 50 years, which means that one of the best levels of protection we've had against disease will be gone possibly within our lifetime, certainly within the lifetimes of our children. So we're expecting to see new pandemics that have a stronger effect on humanity than they had before. A lot of this, again, this is based on the UQ, University of Queensland Medicine Department, who are working to develop alternatives to antibiotics and so on. But one of their expectations is we're going to see new pandemics. They're going to come more frequently. I think COVID's a shot across the bows. And within about 40 to 50 years, we'll have lost the protection we'll have now. So hopefully we'll have new protections in place. New forms of medicine or new ways of surviving a lot of this stuff. Okay, getting down to it. So Pluto and Aquarius. There's a lot going on in that chart. But I'm really fascinated by that big grand trine sitting right in the middle of it. North Node, Sun, Moon. North Node, Sun, ascendant. If I'm reading, yeah.
North Node, Mars, and Sun as well.
Yeah. And Neptune up there as well. I think actually Neptune's the one picking up that Sun,
yes,
Moon. Yeah. Although
and Pluto is sextile to the Sun, so it's joining that grand trine.
Yet in opposition to the Moon. So I guess the Moon, the Pluto is going to be a decider. In terms of consciousness, and again, looking esoterically at the past and the present, the Moon representing the past, the present of the soul, and the Sun representing the present, I guess Pluto is going to be a big decider on how and where we have choices, in regard to that.
Yeah, I was pretty interested in the fact that the Pluto Mars opposition, because that brings in the Aquarius Leo axis right from the very beginning. And so we've got a lot of opposites there, but the capacity to integrate both. And something that I read about it was that particular axis was how the individual can impact the collective, and how the collective can have an impact on the individual, which I think, could be like the theme song for for this particular era that we're about to encounter. And so both, I just feel like both of those aspects are so important. I'm like, from what I was saying before about the movement through Capricorn and beginning to understand more of self, and Capricorn's about fitting into the system, and I feel like that the last maybe year of that Pluto Capricorn has really brought to the surface where you don't fit into the system and where that's a good thing, and if we can as a collective really embody those aspects of self and bring that into the collective, then we build a much stronger collective. A collective that's just created from everyone fitting into what they're supposed to do doesn't really achieve anything. But a collective that's like run from heart in Leo, that that's got some power behind it. So I'm pretty interested in that being a starting point.
The houses that are in support that too. You've got the symbol for the collective in the seventh house and Mars in the first house, so it doubles down on that. It's that Pluto in the seventh house. Part of that feels like a more social centric way of decision making, like a more positive application of cancel culture in a way. You know what I mean? People are, and that's been a really, really interesting twist in the whole Pluto and Capricorn thing, that suddenly these big organizations and corporations have been tripped over by a bunch of angry people on the internet. Which nobody expected, and it's actually impacted their bottom line. My God, I mean, Disney's just hemorrhaging money over this, If anybody should have come out well from all of this, it was them. But so I wonder if we're seeing a more socially inclusive evolution of that way of thinking and that way of doing things, that Pluto and Aquarius. And it has a power to break individual monopolies. Maybe I'd like to, at the very least, it might be something that applies on a voting level. Maybe decisions that way can be made on a more global level, outside governments, outside organisations and things like that. Because we know they're not doing what they need to do, in order to guarantee, longevity for the race, for the human race. So, and that's all pointing off to Neptune and Pisces, and you were talking about Pisces energy before. So I guess, if nothing else, this elections ask people to dig deeper into what they believe, and who they believe. In some ways, really, it's in the most unsatisfactory way, whether your choices were a plutocracy or a fascist government, at the end of the day, at their most extremes, you're either going to choose this one out of control guy or this one person who represents all these forces you don't know and will never see. So that was an unsatisfying choice at the end of the day. But I think people voted on their beliefs in a lot of ways. Whether they won the election or not was another thing. Whether the beliefs as they were presented were factual or not is another thing. But I think it really, really drove this election, and I think it might be the beginning of something.
And that Neptune in Pisces would indicate that. It was like
Yeah.
you voted based on the dream that you have of the potentiality of each of those candidates, even though really, Neptune in Pisces, really you didn't believe it. The dream is there, but the it's an illusion, but you have to hold on to something. And so maybe that's pulling from the past, or trying to create that future with the sun and moon there. And we know that Neptune's going to move into Aries pretty soon, and it'll even move direct pretty soon. So, maybe we can start creating from those dreams. Maybe just being able to have those dreams. Neptune being in Pisces, we were able to dream bigger and further than we've ever had to been able to before. It's let us go deeper than we could have possibly before. And maybe we've pinned those dreams on other people, but maybe those dreams are possible. It's just that those people are not actually relevant somehow.
Well, it's in the ninth house, isn't it? So
And it's
having to find better and higher sources of information outside themselves, outside their own simple prejudice, outside their own traditional models of thinking and things like that. They're having to find bigger answers, and it's getting dangerously close to that North Node up there in Aries, in the same house. So, we're seeing two things. We're seeing that building towards some sort of future direction, I think.
Yeah.
And that's connected up to Mars. So Mars is feeding that Aries-driven North Node up there.
And Mars in Leo, can be action from a heart place, from, really heart and soul there.
Yeah. So you might just get your way, maybe people will start taking that journey to figure out what makes them tick, what they're passionate about, outside work, outside things. And again, too, with this election, everybody had to think bigger than just their own comfort. We had to start planning. We had to start asking ourselves, what sort of world do we want? What's the world going to look like after this election? It was a horrible election in a lot of ways in that regard, because those two futures that were presented were so mutually exclusive of each other, that there were always going to be losers. We've got a trine running from that Pluto up to Uranus up the top there, which is in opposition to the Sun. And they're joined by a sextile, the Sun and Pluto. One of the big things we're looking at with Aquarius is Pluto and Aquarius is technological disruption and decentralization. So I wonder how that's going to play out in the public arena.
I know we're not looking at Trump's chart yet, but that Aquarius passes, Uranus passes over and back his MC.
Okay.
Quite a lot over the next few years. So, whether that brings breakthroughs and freedoms, or if annihilates his standing, who knows? It'll be interesting to play out, and the fact that it's trining that Pluto and Aquarius, if he can embody, again, it comes back to that, if he is willing to move with the flow of this Aquarius
current
momentum, then that Uranus could be really positive. But if not, then it could have a totally different play.
It's interesting with RFK's impact on this administration is to make America healthy again. I wonder if that Venus in Capricorn represents that. There's some work involved in that. There's some planning. It's obviously a goal we're going to have to move towards, because I think America's one of the areas America's leading the world is obesity at the moment. I don't know if they managed to, if they're planning to do something about that. But that may be an indicator of that. You know what I mean?
Well, I had pretty high hopes for that until I saw a photo yesterday of them on their private jet eating McDonald's, and I'm like, well, if JFK is who he says he is and is doing all the things he says he's doing, he's not eating McDonald's. I'm like, that's just bullshit. Yeah. So again, I'm like, oh, fucking Sagittarius moon, Trump Sagittarius moon. It's all talk and there's no depth to it. I'd love to believe that that's an actual thing and that they're going to make a difference, but
we'll see.
We'll see.
Well, and we don't know if we can believe that picture either, Sandra, with AI and all of these fake pictures out there. It's hard for me to believe anything that I see, but unless I see it with my own eyes and it's right in front of me. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to convince me that they're all sitting on a jet eating McDonald's and they let somebody take a picture. That's crazy. That would never happen. Never.
But it was on Trump's account, though. That's where I saw it.
So I don't eat McDonald's, and I'm just a regular person. So I know RFK is not eating McDonald's. You know what I mean? Like, he works out. Like, my husband works out all the time, and you wouldn't catch him eating that stuff. Not because he wants to change the world like RFK, but because it's not good for you. So, I mean, and now these are grown men, you know what I mean, on this plane. And it just, for me, and again, I'm like Crystal, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and that's what they like to call us. I just see through things. I don't believe anything like I said, unless I see it with my eyes right in front of me, period. So
it's a good point.
Who knows? Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So who knows? And especially, like I said, with AI and their ability to alter images and heck, just create images, just by using words, it's hard for me to believe any of that stuff. And especially that. I mean, come on, guys. I mean, if that is the case, why isn't everybody, and that's where we get into this back and forth. And it's all a show. Everything is a show. It's political theater. I say that all the time. I believe, and this is just my opinion, and I could just be crazy or whatever, but I believe that they're all in it together. They're all, after these debates, they all go have a nice steak at the country club. You know, they're all vacationing together. I mean, we're just the little people. We're just the people that they're the ones that run the whole world. So, you know, that's just what I believe. I just believe that, and that's why I don't put a lot of stock into any of this political stuff. You know what I mean? Like, even though we voted, I feel like it was already decided who was. I think all of this happened for a reason. It was to put Kamala Harris out there so that we could get to know her. You know what I mean? And we could see who she is, so that she can have a platform soon to where she's going to come in and she's going to, now that we all know who she is, I mean, she's in, you know what I mean? All she has to do is come in and get out of there, because she was never going to be able to make a difference in the White House and under all of those, she was never going to be able to make a difference there, the way that it's set up, you know what I mean? So that job is for somebody like the man that's Ronald Reagan or Bush or Trump, or and I hate to say this, and I'm a woman, but I hate to say this out loud, but it's a man's job, y'all. I mean, it really is. That job is for a man, because men are built differently than women. We're emotional, we're empathetic, we do want to change the world. This job, and it is a job. The president of the United States is a job just like any other job. I mean, his job is to, you know, keep the peace pretty much with the other countries, or whatever the job is. It's not a job that it's a man's job. I mean, you have to be intimidating. You have to, you know, we're just not, we're nurturing. And so I'm going to wrap all that up by saying it's all political theater, every bit of it. And that's what we're seeing. So that's my opinion. I'm an Aquarius. Hi.
I agree.
But
I
it's always been like that, though.
I totally agree, because it's a position that's created within the patriarchy, right? You know, it's a patriarchal system. And therefore, you know, for a woman to get to the top, she has to embody that patriarchal system, which is denial of, you know, her true essence. And so
Thatcher.
That's Thatcher, yeah. And so, you know, it's the system has to change in order for a woman to excel in that role.
Which maybe Pluto and Aquarius will bring that to us, but we're not there yet.
Exactly. And because then it brings us back to that that Aquarius Leo axis, in that power is in the people, you know, and so this system becomes irrelevant eventually. And so really it's irrelevant who is the top of this system right now, because either he'll pull it down, unlikely, or he will just not do any of the things he said he was going to do, and the people will find their power, you know, and it's that whole thing of, you know, that no one's coming to save you. I think we need to continuously come back to that, because they can make all the promises in the world, but in actual fact, as long as it's serving their bottom dollar, then it's pretty limited as to what they're actually going to do.
Exactly. And that's the main point. It's all just show. It's all show. They're they're all having a stake.
When you vote, you endorse that system. You put your stamp on it and saying, yes, that's the system I'm going to go for. You know, I remember when you were presented with the options, Biden and Trump, everybody thought, well, why the fuck are these my two only choices at the end of the day, you know?
Right.
Who do they represent, you know? And then
that's why so many people sought out.
Exactly. You know what I mean? And then, but then when they chose Kamala, then everybody's like, oh, well, Trump. Yeah, we'll go with Trump, because they weren't ready for a woman. They weren't ready for a person of color. They weren't ready for what she represented, all of that. But at the end of the day, when you stand back, and when I look at especially the last week, Biden standing up and talking about putting these missiles in the Ukraine, at the end of the day, really, you were just voting for whichever shadow power these people represented. You know, Trump, I mean, everybody, you know, I hear a lot of people saying that at the end of the day, they probably, you know, they were best mates. They probably go off to Diddy's place. I don't know. But for them to spend $1 billion to stop Trump, he must have been a threat to somebody. Okay. And I'm not going to go into the why or wherefore of that, but what we're seeing is Trump wants to bring fossil fuel back. He's talking about revitalizing the car industry. He's talking about getting back to fossil fuels and things like that. And I don't know how that's going to sit with Elon Musk, who's been, basically is committed to electrical energy. And with fossil fuels produce all these, these pollutions and all that we've been trying to get rid of for the last God knows how long. So I don't know how well that fits with RFK's let's make America healthy again policies. You know what I mean? But hey, he represents the fossil fuel industry. Meanwhile, we've got the pharmaceutical industry on the other side, who are obviously very, very threatened by what's happening. We've got the weapon manufacturers who have had basically been laundering American money for God knows how long. It goes into, it comes from the American economy. It pays for all these weapons that go off into all these corporations. You've got these tech giants now that are running unregulated and all of those sort of things. Google was one of the biggest campaign contributors to the Democratic Party, who are facing charges for monopolizing digital advertising and all of these things at the same time. So at the end of the day, I think you're right. I think it's not even a job for a man. We could AI this job out. You know what I mean? It's not a job for a
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, why is a man
and the way the
in
bullshit
control?
works, we could just get AIs to do all the votes as well, because at the end of the day, that way we wouldn't have to have all the bullshit of votes disappearing in Florida. Or has Pennsylvania come back yet? Have they sorted their vote situation out? I don't know. All the fraud, all the rhetoric, all this whole electoral college thing that they have going and all this sort of shit. It stopped being theatre a long time ago and became a direct insult, I think, to the American people.
And that's why I feel like it's very
Yeah,
Pluto and Aquarius.
yeah,
You're no longer allowing their souls to be like to contract with
yeah,
this like performative
yeah.
evilness, essentially,
That's
is
it.
what it is. It's
Yeah,
exploitation, actually,
yeah,
of our psyche and our actual like inner knowing that this is what's going on is actually wrong on both sides, and people are becoming
Mm-hmm.
aware of the performativeness of it. And so they're taking a step back and say, I'm not allowing myself to contractually participate in the system.
yeah,
And then they're being demonized for not participating. And then the system,
There you go.
it's the Capricorn and Aquarius dance of
yeah.
like
Now we're getting to it.
system and the individual, and like how do we create true
Mm-hmm.
liberation and true well-being? Well, you have to actually take yourself out of the system
Yeah,
completely.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The fossil fuel industry kills people. The military kills people. The pharmaceutical industry kills people. That's their core business. That's what they profit from. And then the tech
Mm-hmm.
industry, the digital tech industry, hides it all from the American public and distracts everybody while it's happening.
Yeah, with Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fights.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all
But
distract.
even this discussion of UAPs coming up in the last few days, and it happens a day before Biden makes that announcement about putting missiles out there. You know what I mean? I mean, the
All
UAP
distraction.
discussion itself is horrifying to listen to. Has anybody sat down and listened to that Congressional Oversight Committee? A lot of the things that are coming out of that, and the things that I've quietly been following this for a while. I've never committed to it. I've always had my own beliefs around it, but again, too, I've been seeing these gun cam photos and all of this coming up for years now. But now they've got 21 cases on public record of not just of seeing things, but interacting with them. These things that have taken an aggressive posture, that have hurt people, that are hanging around refinery, like nuclear plants and things like that. And they do it so consistently and for so long that they just accept they're there because they can't do anything about it. And how I can't help but understand if this is a topic in itself we're supposed to look at, and if this really is a thing, then this changes everything for us. It makes everything else irrelevant that we're talking about, this squabbling over our health and which country we're going to invade and how we're going to make our next dollar. We have to start thinking as a species. And if it's not real, then what's it hiding? And what it looks like it could be hiding is World War III. We're putting missiles into the Ukraine to attack a country that's made it very, very clear that you fire a single one of those missiles, you'll get a nuclear response. You know what I mean? And so that's what's on the table. I think we're talking about the Pluto and Capricorn crystallizing and putting everything out there to see before it gets shattered. This is in the last, what, 4 days? You know, all this has come up. And I know from that Congressional Oversight Committee, a lot of the reason they're coming out is because they're scared of Trump's transparency. You know, they're expecting that he's going to bring it out anyway. So we may as well get out in front of this thing and start talking about it. But how many more of these dirty secrets are there? You know?
Also, I
many.
find it very interesting, like for the rhetoric of, and I'm just saying this is interesting, so
Yeah.
interpretation, whatever. But it's very interesting that like the the Democrats are demonizing the Republicans, or Republicans are demonizing the Democrats, that they're both, the Republicans are a threat to democracy, and this like rhetoric of like, no, you have to choose like one or the other, or but then you see them both sitting down with each other and being like, congratulations, President-elect. This is a peaceful transition of power. It's so performative. And so like you said, Damien, the insult to the American people to not be like, they clearly don't have astrologists on or astrologers on their teams to say like this is, I don't know. I'm very tired, but it's something that's
Following you. Yep.
the performativeness of
Mhm.
it is
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
Yeah,
insulting.
totally.
So
Yeah.
twee, you know, it's so fake.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
You have to be able
Yep.
to see through all that. You have to be able to see past it, which we
We've got a
can't
moon
because we're
in Cancer
astrologers.
in the 12th house, and I think maybe a lot of that's wrapped up in that. You know, these old ideas that we've had, and these old instinctive reflexes that are such an ingrained part of us because they come from our parents, they come from our schools, they come from our societies, all of this sort of stuff. They come from our idea of what home is and who we are when we've already established that we outsourced that a long time ago. We were talking how the home was probably one of the first real casualties of the modern digital economy. So maybe that moon there is suggesting that we've been holding on to these ideas of who we are. And again, too, you know, the Democrats, for once, are the people censoring and controlling what we can and can't say, which has always been the province of the Republicans. And the Republicans are all about deregulation. I know Reagan had a lot to do with that in this time, but generally deregulation's been something of the Democrats, you know, more personal freedoms and all of that regard. So even that's flipped. So our ideas of who we are and what our institutions stand for that we've had in the back of our mind, maybe they're all up for review. You know, we don't vote from the gut anymore. We don't vote based on some fact that leaked or some photo that we saw or some statement that somebody made, you know, and things like that. And at the end of the day, we just look for what's going to create results, because we go through this whole election process knowing these people are full of shit anyway. You know, at the end of the day, they're probably not going to start doing any of the things they promised to do until the last quarter of their time, in the hope that it'll convince people that they'll vote for them again. You know, like they've always done. You know.
I think it's interesting what you said there about the things that we're holding on to with the moon in Cancer, because I've sort of felt that with the conversation earlier with regards to the things that we were worried about with Pluto being in Aquarius. And it's because it is this whole new, potentially unknown world that feels scary because, you know, who are we if we're not working? Who are we if you know we're not, you know, the same things aren't important to us anymore as always have been? You know, it begs that question. And so, you know, Pluto in Aquarius comes in and says, well, you know, this we're starting something new. And again, it's like, and because the thought even occurred to me, it's like, well, we like the security and the stability of these things that we know, and the move towards all of that higher technology and everything that involves is really scary. But maybe we're supposed to let go of all of that stuff that we know and move into it. which feels really scary because where's your foundation then? But that opposition speaks to that, which I don't like.
It triples down on that. You've got the moon in Cancer in the 12th house. You've got the ascendant, who we, the image of ourselves we have, and Mars in the first house are all in opposition to that Pluto. One of the things that's always...
Are we being asked to give up our humanity?
Well,
Are we being asked to
that's
give up our
always
humanity?
been a bit of a paradox for me is the model of consciousness. I look at esotericism, for example. It talks about we all incarnate at the lowest level on the physical plane and we move up in terms of consciousness until we become universal consciousness. Now, being connected to the universe, I think some part of me at some level intellectually has an idea of what that might be like. Being an individual, doing what I want, how I want, when I want, all of that stuff, I know how that works. That whole no man's land in between those 2 points, what does that look like? What does that involve? When do we start letting go of our own individual attachments and the things that are important to us and the things that make us mistrust other people and want to merge with the rest of humanity? Where is that part? For want of a better thing, probably the one thing that's going to do it right now is the confirmation of the existence of aliens. You know what I mean? At the most base level, it's probably going to take something as radical as that to do it. Whether that's what's happening or not remains to be seen. But where's the part where we suddenly decide that, you see all those stories on Facebook of Karens and angry neighbours, that are at war with each other and stuff like that because their own comfort and their own belief systems, they believe trump everybody else's rights and all of that sort of stuff. When do we let go of that and start caring about other people and start being connected to other people and start being involved in the betterment of other people? What triggers that at a social level, at a global level? What triggers that? If we're going to evolve as a species and if we're going to survive as a species, we're going to have to overcome that obstacle because, again, a lot of the powers that we've seen who are funding this election and a lot of the ones that are presenting this model that none of us really are invested in or care about, want us to all think the way that we've always been thinking. So we're going to have to depart from that, get away from the death industry and start focusing on the life industry, And I don't know what that looks like. Yeah.
What you were saying about the new pandemics that are anticipated and the new medications that they need to create in order to protect us from them. It's like, well, we never closed down fast food joints. We never told everyone to take zinc and vitamin C in high quantities when COVID was going on. We never looked at why people were so susceptible to actual viruses. And so, now that we've got the time and space, shouldn't we potentially do that instead of creating more, medically advanced technology that will protect us, although you'll still get it and you'll still transfer it and you'll still have to isolate and mask up. It's, I don't know. It comes back to that waiting for a savior, right? It's like, we just keep standing around here waiting for a savior when, we're here because all of our ancestors survived everything that they've ever encountered. We're so much more powerful than we give ourselves credit for. And we're standing here waiting for a savior.
We're better positioned to kill ourselves too, though, than we've ever been. That's one difference. And we have no control over that. That's the thing. I was watching this pilot who had been tracking these UAPs. Some guy had been doing maneuvers, had been flying for hours watching these things moving off the coast of the US. And he said that all the F-18s that they were flying, they've got all this sensor equipment on them, and everything on their jet basically has improved new digital cameras, including the missiles and the gun cams. And they trained all of these things on one of these ships to get a better picture of it. And I thought, wait a second, these are weapons. You're pointing weapons at some unknown species that none of us know, with no oversight, with no accountability to the human race or anything like that. And when you look at it that way, you start looking at the development of viruses, you start looking at the development of technologies, you look at companies that are building things to put up in the sky, you look at people who are surveying the human race and watching us and all of that sort of stuff without any oversight, without any accountability. other than an election. That's pretty much the only sight they have, you know. But just that moment where that guy said that they had pointed all their gun cams and their missiles, it's effectively locking this thing. How do you get the authority to do that? You don't do it just for yourself. You do it for everybody. You do it for us. That could be catastrophic. Donald Trump, is he the man?
Should we look at the chart that lines up with the Aquarius?
Yeah, there's two.
I liked the one that showed his houses because then we can see where it falls into his houses.
Are you talking about Trump in the center?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Trump and Pluto.
Yeah.
Just as a reference, so this interested me. This is Trump as the center chart and Pluto and Aquarius as the outside chart. Yeah, have a look at all the aspects. So effectively, in a lot of ways, I guess this is the impact the world's going to have on Trump and the impact Trump's going to have on the world. There's not a lot of contact there, but when we flip that equation, we get something completely different. So I don't know what that means. Does that mean that the changes that are coming are bigger than Trump, bigger than him and his administration can cope with? Maybe just bigger than he can cope with. I mean, we've already identified some inconsistencies between Trump and his administration in terms of their long-term interests and things like that. And maybe the best thing Trump can do is what I'm suspecting he might be doing right now, which is choosing a really powerful council and then maybe taking less of an active role than he has in before and letting them all do their things. I don't know. But this is Trump as the center chart.
A big difference.
Sorry, go ahead, Crystal.
No, I was just saying that is a big difference.
Yeah, massive difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe Pluto's gonna have a lot of significant changes on Trump. Period. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm worried it's going to roll right over the top of them.
Yeah. Right.
Well, you know what I found interesting was that Pluto has been transiting his fifth house the whole time it's been in Capricorn, and it starts in his fifth house, so it's still there. And so his Pluto is in Leo, and Pluto has been transiting fifth house, which is Leo's house. And so I found that quite an interesting thing to start off with.
Isn't that an interesting sort of pseudo-anarchist placement? He's gotten a lot of mileage out of breaking stuff. You know what I mean? Out of destroying things, out of attacking ideas and things like that. I guess a lot of that Pluto stuff, he's gotten a lot of mileage, especially the first time around. I think he's come better prepared the second time around. I think he's got more of a game plan. I remember on the Joe Rogan podcast, he said the hardest day for him, the most surreal day, was the first day in the White House. He didn't know what to do. So he was quite open about that. But I think he's ready this time. But
well, he's got
what I'm trying to make is he's getting a lot of mileage out of breaking stuff. You know what I mean? And destroying institutions, destroying ideas, releasing secrets people don't want released. They're all anarchist moves, and they've really, really played up to his strength. You know, they've really, really paid off for him. Especially more.
And he's got
trying to respond. Yeah.
He's got that Sun in Uranus, and so he's always going to go for the unexpected and shine the light on that and do things that people don't expect him to do. And Jupiter sitting on his on that stellium of his North Node and
Sun and
Uranus and his Sun in his 10th house. I mean, not over yet.
No, it's just getting started. Anybody concerned by all that 8th house stuff happening from Pluto and Aquarius? He doesn't seem to have an answer for that. There seem to be some big forces. There's Chiron, there's the midheaven, There's the North Node and there's Neptune all moving into his eighth house, and he doesn't have anything there. It's his eighth house is ruled by Pisces.
Pluto
Um,
and Pluto.
oh yeah. So
Yeah. There's a lot of Pluto here on this chart.
yeah. In fact, where's that? Are there any oppositions coming from that? Yes, North Node's in opposition to Neptune. So maybe the prevailing belief systems and whatever the case may be may not play well with his own internal prejudice or beliefs, you know. Maybe he'll be held to account for a lot of that alt-right stuff he came around with the first time around. You know, it's not gone. A lot of the things that people got a lot of mileage out of, at least from the Democrats when they were coming after him, and a lot of the things that upset a lot of people were a lot of the things he did the first time around that somehow he seems to have let go of and moved on from. You know, thank you, Diddy. So,
Well,
yeah,
that Neptune in the second house, you know, that could be, you know, illusions or, you know,
yeah,
hidden things around money, and that's conjunct his south node, or conjunct the transit south node at the moment. It's exact actually.
yeah.
And so, you know, maybe you know, maybe he's letting go of that stuff, or maybe he's about to be made let go of that stuff. Maybe that stuff's gonna no longer be hidden. Maybe it's gonna be highlighted. Who knows?
And maybe if he doesn't get over it or explain himself better, he's going to pay for it. That could also be a part of it.
Yeah, well, because that Chiron in the eighth house is in opposition to the Chiron in the second house.
Yep. So basically, fears and expectations of pain he's already got are coming to fruition. That Neptune's moving into position, the midheaven, the North Node. So it's interesting to come back to what we were talking about before. Either Trump's going to keep up with the current of what's going on, or he won't, but it will keep moving the way that it's moving. We got those two sitting in the eighth house there. There's going to be transformation. There's going to be change. It's going to be big. But he's either going to move with it or he won't, you know. It will still keep moving without him. The biggest mistake he can make right now, that's what they're saying, with all, especially with that Gemini stuff, is that he believes all of these things are happening because of him. That's the biggest mistake you could make. You know?
Yeah.
And he's got too powerful a cabinet around him now, which he's hand selected to go all in with him on that fantasy, I think. You know. We say all this assuming he doesn't get shot in the next 4 years. The next 4 months.
You mean shot again?
You know, again.
Well, that was the other thing.
Successfully
That was
shot.
the other thing. His Pluto moves into his sixth house around the day of inauguration.
Yeah.
Sorry, Pluto transit in Pluto in Aquarius moves into his sixth house around the day of inauguration.
That's right.
So, you know, does that mean, you know, his everyday work is facilitating the flow of this Pluto in Aquarius? Possibly.
It could just point to a health event too, you know.
Ah,
How old is he? 79.
it could do.
79. Oldest president to be sworn in. You know, it could be an organic health thing. It could be an inorganic health thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
interesting also that one of the major themes is making America healthy again.
Yeah.
And
With fossil fuels.
Pluto with fossil fuels.
Gotta love Gemini.
Yeah.
Right.
That moon conjunct the south node down there in the fourth house is really, really interesting to me in Sagittarius. His whole political platform, his whole economic platform right now is basically isolationism, returning America back to the way it was pre-World War II. And flip back to Reaganomics in a lot of ways too, you know, going back in the 80s. So it's a time machine. Basically, it's to send everything back to the way it was, a happier time, a bigger time, a better time. It's going to be amazing, folks. You're going to love it. It's great. So, and that's been his whole position this whole time too. And I think a lot of people have emotionally, and maybe that won him and more of the boomers than he had before too, because they were there. They knew that was a better time and things like that. And I wonder if that's linked to that moon conjunct the South Node. It's an attachment to the past in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also something that he needs to let go of.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're seeing that with that Neptune there in the second house up against all that stuff, that stellium up there in the eighth house. If he holds on to it, everything he's got, it's going to roll right over the top of them. He's got to let go of some of those ideas, or he can hold on to them, but don't think that they're going to be the way things need to be in order to get what he wants. You know what I mean? This is going to surge forward without him, I think.
And you've got that the Pluto in Aquarius is in opposition to his Venus in Cancer.
Yeah.
In the 11th house. And so
those are two malefics. Two malefics on this chart. Pluto and Saturn there in his 11th house. I mean, that's a really wide orb, really wide.
And so you'd wonder what part I mean, clearly there's mother issues, and what part they're going to play in this new move into Aquarius. Maybe he gets the opportunity to heal his mother issues, and therefore be able to do the work that Pluto and Aquarius is asking of him. We can always look to the highest possible potential here.
Maybe. I mean, he is almost 79. No time like the present to heal the wounds, right?
That being said, too, I mean, look at this. Look at all this that's going on. That's Pluto. That's Pluto's plans for everything. And that's Trump getting chewed up in the grinder of that in a way. Maybe his whole job is just to come here and do what he's so good at, which is break other people's stuff. Break other people's stuff, get ideas, and then have a heart attack or get shot or whatever. I hate to say, the job looks bigger than one person's ego. And I think if he's going to do it right, he's going to. I don't think it was all bad the first time around when he came in, and a lot of people won't like me saying that. I couldn't care less. But second time around, it looks to me like he's come smarter, a little bit more contrite. I've watched him standing on stage while other people speak, and he's respectfully stood there and listened to them speak on his platform and things like that too. And what interested me the second time around, we've seen evidence of a lot of the things that people said he was going to do the first time around, the negative things he didn't do. He had the power to do it, he didn't do it. The very least it was put Hillary in jail. I don't know what that means, but so maybe if he's come back as a humbler version of himself who's got a bigger plan, and he's presented some pretty grandiose stuff in the last couple of weeks. If he's got the follow through on that, then hey, I'm all ears.
Yeah, that's the way my sister was saying.
Yeah.
He was thinking that the second time around, he may have learned his lesson.
Yeah.
And we've all evolved over, this Pluto in Capricorn. None of us are the same as we were when it moved in 2008. And we've evolved at a pretty rapid rate over the last 4 years, for sure. And so, who's to say that he hasn't as well? I don't believe one way or the other, but the potential is there. It's been a pretty strong stream of energy. It's been intense. I think we can all agree that it's been intense in our personal lives. And so, he's a person. And he's got Pluto in his 12th house. So there's the potential that there's been a lot of inner work that's taken place there. And then Mars in Leo is conjunct that at the minute. And so it gets to play out in the world now what has been worked on. There is the potential.
Hmm. That's a good point. He is a human. We need to remember that.
He
He's
needs to
affected just
remember
like we are. You know what I mean?
that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, we think he's a human.
Yeah.
Right.
Right, we know.
Yeah.
Maybe these UOPs are just coming to take him home. Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll
He
bring
could
other
be cloned,
miniatures.
like the sheep cloned. Who knows? I'm certain Biden has been cloned. No doubt.
In 1946. One thing that's clear from this is he's not going to get any breaks. That seventh and eighth house is going to hold him to account.
Yeah.
And he's
Yeah.
made a lot of
There's so
enemies. He's made a lot of enemies. If it's all going to be him, it's going to fail. He's not. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You just get too much resistance to be able for one person to be able to withstand that much amount of pushback. He's going to have to rely on other people. I follow another YouTube channel sometimes. It's called the Cartier family. It's 4 or 5 young black guys. I think they're down your way, Crystal, who they just react and respond to all sorts of stuff. And they've been watching this election with real interest. But I was watching them responding to Trump, talking about the overhauls. They're talking about the education system, about new infrastructure and stuff, and seeing how excited they are about the future, about having real education opportunities, about all this industrialization that's happening, all these job opportunities that are coming up and stuff. It was really, really, really heartwarming for me to watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They
A lot of
became,
people
yeah,
are they're trusting in Trump now. They're
yeah.
like, you know what I mean?
Mm,
Um, Me, one way or the other, like for me, and this is just for me, and they might hang me to the cross for this, but I stand by what I believe in.
mm,
I don't vote. I don't believe in it. And you're talking about a person who went to criminal justice, got 100 and something credits. I
mm,
was really into that, and somewhere along the line in 2015, my trust just went. So, a lot of it be going back and forth with people about what I believe in, but I'm not going to do it because I know, I stand by what I stand by. So when it gets to talking about politics, I'll step in and say what I say, and then I step out. I don't really won't say much because I know, well, they fought for our right to vote, and yeah, they fought for our right to vote if we want to vote. I don't want to vote. You're not going to make me do something I don't want to do, and that's where my rebellious nature is coming at. Like I told Michael, and my whole mission is just to raise vibrations collectively. That's all I want. I don't know what their agenda is, and it ain't my job in this lifetime to find out.
mm.
I don't think Trump's a bad guy. I think everybody here for their mission, and my mission is just to raise vibrations. So if I'm worried about what I'm doing, I can't really worry about what he's doing. So I don't think I don't think he's a bad guy. I think he's coming a lot better than he did the last time. But as far as voting and stuff and politics, I really I don't trust him enough to get into it. So I won't, you know. And I guess they can just take it the way they want to if they don't like it. No.
But you're seeing a lot of
But
optimism
it's
around him about what he's doing. Trust,
huh?
you were saying there's a lot of trust in his vision at the moment that you're seeing.
Well, I see he's a lot different from what I expected from him the first time.
Yeah.
And as the years went by, I realized he's not just. Sometimes it's just about listening to what everybody else is saying, and I'm really not good at that. I like to make my own opinions based off of what I know. So once I really got to understand this guy is a little misunderstood. He may not be the brightest bulb in the box on certain things, but I don't know if he ever really had malicious intent. For whatever reasons he wanted to go for president the first time. I'm not sure if it was an ego thing, but I think
It
this
was an
time,
ego
I think he
thing.
may have a different, yeah. I think this time it might be a different mindset. He might have come in with better intentions this time. So I guess, I'll just watch with the rest of the world how it play out. But I don't think it's the same as the last time. So I agree. I think it's something different. I think he learned a little bit last. I
You know,
don't know about the girl. What's her name?
Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I don't even know her. Why would I go vote for her? I didn't even follow I didn't even follow these people. So if I went to go vote, it would just be to appease other people.
Yeah.
You know, I
Mhm.
shut down when it comes to that because it's just, I don't know, deeper stuff, I guess.
Mhm.
But yes, it don't look too bad. It look like it's gonna be some change, whether Pluto change him completely or whether he working Pluto, which I doubt very seriously. Um, it don't,
Probably the first one, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. It don't look too bad.
It looks busy.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, it looks busy, and whatever business is going on, it seems to just wash right off Trump. There's not a lot of aspects on this page. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, like I said, maybe his job was just to get the train this far. This is its station, and now it's getting ready to embark again. It's interesting what you say because I felt a lot of the same on it. The first time Trump ran around, there was all this negative publicity about stuff he did, stuff he said, things about his business sense, all of that sort of stuff. Basically, shit slinging. And I have to admit, I bought into a lot of it. And like I said, after he got in, I expected the American dollar to just nosedive, and it didn't. It got stronger, and I honestly think that if
Right.
COVID hadn't have happened, it would have been stronger still. And a lot of the things people accused him of how he'd abuse his power, he just didn't do. So I think maybe
He did.
he's just a big mouth. He's full of shit. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
he's and he's got some hideous traits about him. But I guess in order to be the person that he's needed to be, he's done those things. But nothing he did was nearly as hideous as a lot of the things I saw from the Democratic side in this election. And that was hordes of people funded by $1 billion, well in advance, to just attack. I saw an absolute shortage of creativity. They didn't create anything, they just destroyed. We're sitting about Trump, how he gets a lot of mileage out of destroying stuff. He's certainly more of precision than what I saw. They just destroyed everything. They just sent all this hate out. Their whole message in a lot of ways was just different types of hate.
Agree.
And they didn't stand for anything. So not from what I saw here in Australia. I saw a few pie in the sky promises, the financially unsustainable $1 million for every black man to borrow. And other things like that. And then they went straight back to bashing and hating on Trump again. I don't think anything that hateful should ever get any real milege, but that's just me.
Absolutely.
If nothing else, when somebody stands
Absolutely.
up and says, hey, I'm committing to world peace, then I'll give them my time. I'll listen to what they've got to say. Even if I know they're on a personal level pretty vile. He's shown me enough.
Right.
He's shown me
Yeah.
enough in the past to see that, okay, but there's more to him than just rubbish hair and 79 years of corrupt experience. It's just, he's certainly the lesser of two evils. Hell, they'll pay $1 billion
Exactly.
to shut him up. So
Yeah.
let the man speak.
And that's what it just seems to be nowadays. Pick between
Yeah.
the lesser of the two evils, and I don't want to do that.
It's not a good
You know?
choice. Yeah, that just shows how broken the system is.
Yeah.
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 Well, the first time around it was the vote for the most likely to survive 4 years. So so old, both of them. And Biden had already lost that. I mean, we've seen that. So I don't know.
And I don't even know what that was about. I don't even remember. I don't even remember them 4 years. I was,
Yeah, right.
Joe
Did
who?
anything.
Yeah.
Didn't do anything.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
Man. Crazy. Yep.
Well, I might put a pin in it here, guys. We've covered a lot of ground. Look, does anybody have any finishing thoughts? Anything they want to say? This became a bizarre, but really, really interesting reading. It's different from anything else we've ever done.
Yeah, very informative too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So it's interesting to hear how other people think and what other people see. But does anybody have any statements they want to send out into the world?
Let's raise vibration.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how much Plutonian energy there is in that synastry chart.
Yeah.
And so if nothing else, we'll have massive amounts of transformation, or he will.
Mhm.
You know, it's yeah, it is. I mean, and then you've got eighth house, second house, 12th house. You know, there's a lot going
Mhm.
on in all of it. So there's a lot of political connotations there. We'll see how it all plays out.
And we're already seeing a huge transformation with the people he's appointing, the people he's
Yeah.
putting into the,
It's not playing this
they're
time. Yeah.
correct, right. Yeah. So I mean, there's going to be a change for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm
Mhm.
anticipating a change for the better, because look, can it get any
Mhm.
worse? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the
Right.
past 4 years have just been,
Right.
I mean, just yeah.
That's why I said Joe who.
That's what Joe Biden's saying too. Joe who? Joe who?
Yeah. And-
You're going to get us cancelled.
Sorry.
right.
Good for you. Good for you. I couldn't.
That's why I went
We're
over
Gen
my
X
mouth.
here.